First, let's prepare our fabrics before we start eco dyeing. I've got this fabric that I'd eco dyed before, it didn't turn out, and some cotton fabrics, there's a bed sheet, and I've also got some muslin. Now the muslin I got from the fabric store, so it's got a lot of starch on it. So all these fabrics we are going to wash in the washing machine. And if you have fabrics that haven't been pre-washed, then I would recommend definitely washing them with soap in your washing machine. While your fabric's washing, you can get your pots ready to make your dye bath. Now, I would definitely recommend using some pots that you are not using for cooking and keep them separate for your eco dyeing. And in go the blackberries. So exciting. Oh my gosh. I have to say that I might have eaten just as many as I picked for the dye bath. Just saying. So, if you're collecting blackberries or you want to experiment with some other berries, make sure you really mush them well so it looks almost like a jam in the pot there, because you want to get the most of the color from your berries. So now it's time to add some water, and here I'm going to add about 1 to 1, so about as much water as blackberries. You could probably do 2 to 1, a bit more water than berries, but I really wanted this color to be rich. So we are going to simmer the berries. When you're cooking with berries or some kind of fruit, you don't want to boil it because they're delicate. So you just really want to be just simmering it lightly here. And it's looking like it's got a nice color. There's a few fruit bits that didn't get smushed. And if that happens to you, you can just take your spoon and crush them a little bit if that worries you. But I think, it's pretty well smushed and crushed here. And you can see the color emerging already. So while the blackberries are starting to simmer, let's scour our fabrics. Get a pot, make sure it's not one you're cooking with again. Put a lot of water into it, and here we are adding about 2 teaspoons of soda ash and a teaspoon of eco-friendly laundry detergent. I'm using the doTERRA here. And you want to give it a really good stir and get it boiling, because we're going to put the fabric in, and that is going to scour anything remaining on the fabric, any starches or anything like that, and it's going to let the dye really adhere to the fabric even more. And I decided to add some macrame cord in there too, because I wanted to do an experiment and see what was going to happen. And I feel like a scientist in my kitchen when I'm experimenting with all these things. An artist scientist, it's so fun. So throw all your fabric in there and make sure that all the fabric is being covered by the water as much as possible, and boil it for a good hour. So of course we're going to need to strain our berry pulp from our juice, and I've just taken some cheesecloth here and put it over a bowl, but if you want to use a sieve you can do that too. Either way I think will be just fine. And oh my goodness guys, I'm so excited about this color already. There's a lot of pulp, but you can squeeze a little bit more juice out of it, I think, if you want to, and then take it away and put it in a little bowl, and you can put it in your compost bucket. Then peel off your cheesecloth, and what we'll do is I'm going to transfer the juice from the bowl back into the pot, because that's where I'm going to add my fabric. Now here's the scoured fabric, and you can see the water in there. It's turned sort of like almost a light tea color and like a browny yellow. But all the fabrics have been totally scoured. They're going in there in a minute. Now of course you want to rinse that scoured fabric in the sink and then just sort of wring it out so that it's really clear, and then the magic happens. And then you can put everything into your pot. Oh my goodness, look at that. It's changing color already so quickly. What a very strong dye bath this is with the blackberries. Amazing result so soon. It's like magic. Now, how long do you leave your fabric in there? It's really personal preference, but remember, when you're putting your fabric in, you want to take it out and rinse it, and then it's going to get a lot lighter because a lot of the dye will wash off your fabric as you rinse it, and I would always recommend rinsing it with cold water. Now, that's my cheesecloth, and look, it's already gone dyed just from me straining the blackberries. So you know what? If you had cheesecloth, why not just throw it right in the dye bath? Because you could use that for any project, any mixed media project, or you know, some sort of stitching, whatever you think. And how cool is that? Oh my gosh, guys, that looks so delicious. I just want to eat it. Again, it's personal preference how long you want it to sit in the bath. I'm going to leave it for about an hour because I think it's a really strong bath already, and you know, I'm pretty impatient, so I like to poke and prod within the hour, and I would recommend that too, especially if some of the fabric's peeping out like it is here. You want to make sure that all the fabric is covered as much as possible with the dye. Oh my goodness! Wow, look at that. That's been about an hour now. And yes, I'm wearing rubber gloves because, you know, I just didn't know if my hands would get stained because, you know, your hands can really get stained from blackberries. So I'm assuming they get stained from the blackberry dye as well. So let's give everything a good squeeze out all that extra juice, all that extra dye. And you know, of course, in this pot there's a lot of dye left over, and if you have a lot of dye left over, which you probably will, you can freeze that dye and use it later, or you can just take a little bit and put in a little pot and you can use it as ink and make some marks on some watercolor paper as if it were watercolor paint. Give your fabric a good rinse with cold water, as I was saying, and wring it out really well so that we can hang it on the line to dry. That is just fantastic. I am in love with that. Do you love that as much as I do? I love when these colors go rich, because a lot of time eco dyeing isn't rich, it's very light. Just remember, guys, that it might look nice and dark and deep while it's still wet, hanging to dry. But when it does dry, the color does change and it lightens up, usually quite a bit, and sometimes even the color changes. So it's really fun to just watch and see how that science experiment in itself works and what colors you're going to end up with for real. And when you're all finished, if you want, you can write your process in a little journal, clip some fabric pieces in there so that you know what you did, and if you want to recreate it, you can do that again. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Take care, you. See you next time.